There were once two sisters named Polly and Molly. They were twins, and they looked exactly the same. Their mother, however, did not think so. Their mother thought Molly looked like an angel, and that Polly looked like a devil. She did not hesitate to share stories to illustrate that her take on their appearance was equal to their reality as well. Every fault of Polly's was broadcast, and every point of pride that Molly could provide was broadcast as well. Not only did Polly and Molly grow up hearing the stories, but so did the town. The town began to see them in kind. Polly stopped washing her hair or her face and slowly took on the shape they gave her, a bedraggled monster. Molly, on the other hand, took great care to look as holy and pure and lovely as humanly possible. She too took on the shape they gave her, the pride of the town. The town began to assume any behavior emulating Molly was a great idea to be pursued at all costs, and any behavior edging towards Polly's behavior was soon considered unlawful. The town began to look like Molly, which at first was nice. She was lovely to look at. But when everyone started to dye their hair to match, and the shop started making only one style of dress, it did become a bit odd. But everyone was so pleased with the simplicity it was bringing to their list of choices and challenges. They didn't have to look far to know what to do. Molly was taking on more responsibilities as she grew up. She started to feel the pressure to be perfect, expanding into how she set her table, how she planted her garden, and how she should choose to hang her drapes and sew her pillows. It made sense after all. It would soon impact an entire town directly. She was their moral compass and they needed guidance. Polly had long since left the town, due to her very existence being labeled as wrong. Her first night in the woods was spent weeping, and no woodland creatures came alongside for fear of the noise. She cried for many days, getting by on the very little food she could manage to forage. She had never been to the forest before because her mother had said it was unsafe. So when the town became unsafe, she was forced to choose which type of unsafe she would embrace. She chose the wild unknown. The town had already chosen its twin, and she knew that outcome by heart. It is here that we pause our story for me to tell you that I grew up hearing the stories of Polly and Molly, but not their town and not their mother, just their perceived shapes. Their escapades were told to me to encourage morality. Just kid stuff, the little things. Sometimes about Polly stealing cookies from the cookie jar, and sometimes about Molly being a cheerful giver, things like that. But the names Polly and Molly are tattooed on my heart. I've been questioning my attachment to the idea of being right. What is being right? And what is being true? And how does meaning come into this mix? As I tried to understand that nuance, Polly and Molly walked up into my mind to come and hold my hands. And it's from inside of gratitude that I wanted to write this story for them. I believe they were misunderstood, and I want to tell their story as someone from outside the town. I don't know the end of the story. I'm letting it fall out of me as I go. I'm trying to see if I can find the meaning while they hold my hands. So let's get back in there, shall we? The town was becoming ever more sophisticated. Ever-evolving etiquette was arriving, ever-evolving codes of ethics, ever-evolving standards of dress, and ever-evolving calendar timelines for everyone to sync up with Molly's beautiful self-policing. It looked so curated, so fairytale holding a ball every day. It flowed so efficiently, all in one direction, all towards one goal. The town was a jewel in the hands of Molly, and she was a benevolent mistress. Most of the time, her duties kept her mind far too occupied to remember Polly, And the town certainly did not spend much time thinking of her either. But if they did, it was to maintain their grudge and praise her absence. But while that was happening, Polly was learning the land. She began to watch the creatures, and they showed her where the sweetest roots hid. She began to sit by the river, and it taught her how to move around obstacles without losing her momentum. She watched the moss on the north side of the trees and the way the birds grew quiet before a storm. And she realized the forest was always talking, always providing, long before the trouble ever arrived. Her skin began to tell her where to go and what to do. When the wind blew, she knew what it meant. Her ears became attuned to new sounds, and after enough time, she knew their languages. It softened the stiffness in her stance, once braced against the town, loosened to bend like branches in the wind. Her love of the water washed the dirt off of her face and out of her hair without any added effort on her part, and she went from the devil to a nymph. The woodland creatures were no longer afraid of her. They knew her language as well, and she knew she was never alone. She had no calendar, only the sun. There was no etiquette, only sensations, sometimes from without, sometimes from within, and those were what she followed. When she first arrived, she thought of the town quite often, sometimes in anger, sometimes in rebellion, sometimes in devastating, nauseating, heartbreaking grief, sometimes with hope, sometimes with hate. But over time, as she healed, the memory softened into a foggy, distant lesson she had learned, with an occasional surprise burst of gratitude, and sometimes a surprise burst of grief. But most of the time, she spent living with the forest, knowing this was the best place she could be. Back in the town, things still looked picture perfect, but under the surface, people were starting to feel compressed. Some people were very aligned with Molly's choices, but others were not, and they were beginning to notice. They didn't feel very good anymore. Some people felt moody, others felt sick. But the town was flowing so well, and everyone kept smiling and moving in that one-directional flow because it was the right thing to do. They did not want to be the one flowing in the wrong direction. The ornate design and complex flow that Molly had lovingly crafted was becoming a heavy load for the town to bear. While they were able to maintain the momentum on the outside, on the inside, the townsfolk were starting to collapse under the pressure. Conversations became superficial small talk to cover over the lack of true joy. Relationships became part of the etiquette. The drive for being right became so all-consuming that when the textile mill could no longer provide the right cloth for the right occasions, there was a need for a town meeting. The first time this happened, Molly could pivot to make a new plan, keep everyone on board. But by the next time, it had become clear that Molly had birthed a new entity, that it was alive, a living, breathing force of nature that could be entirely disconnected from her, just so long as the town could continue making right choices. Once the town perceived that, Molly's place in society became very fragile. While she had always been making choices with the town in mind before, now she was living to make choices that would ensure the town would keep her. She no longer knew what she liked. She watched for clues from outside of her to tell her what she should like. By this point, no one was doing anything that they actually wanted to do. But the town's economy was flowing, and the town's calendar was functioning, and people looked happy on the outside. So they left things the way they were. It is here I pause to say, I feel very tempted to write a victorious ending for Polly and a humbling chain of events for Molly and the town. Very tempted. But both Polly and Molly are still holding my hands. I'm beginning to see they are both me, and I believe Molly has already been humbled, and I believe Polly has already had her victory. And I believe they both may have shown me exactly why I'm now free to let go of being right and to learn to choose what is most aligned to me from the endless piles of what is, and know that that is true. And to trust that, just as the weather shifts, so will all that is as well.